Welcome to While We Were Distracted, the podcast where we explore topics that often get overshadowed in the rush of daily life.
Imagine you're a forensics investigator, right? You are working a major high-profile crime scene.
Right, the pressure is totally on.
Exactly. So you're meticulously scanning the pavement, you're looking for any physical evidence left behind, and then you spot it, a spent brass shell casing.
Which is, usually the holy grail of a shooting scene.
Right. So you pick it up carefully with tweezers, you seal it in an evidence bag and take it back to the lab. And you place it under a microscope, expecting to maybe find, like, a partial fingerprint or a unique firing pin impression.
Yeah.
But instead, you look through the lens and you find an internet meme carved into the metal.
It's just, it completely shatters what we expect from a crime scene. And more importantly, what we expect from the psychology of someone committing an act of lethal violence.
It really does.
We're so used to physical evidence being incidental, like something that a perpetrator tried to hide but failed. But what we are seeing now is evidence designed as a broadcast.
And that is exactly the phenomenon we're exploring for you today. Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of sources to go through. We're looking at investigative news reports from two deeply shocking high-profile assassinations, one from December 2024 and another from September 2025.
Yeah, two very distinct cases.
Right. And alongside those, we are pulling from a Wikipedia article that details a highly controversial war crowdfunding website. So we're looking at the murders of two highly polarizing figures today, Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, and Charlie Kirk, the prominent right-wing political commentator.
And I think we need to just pause here and establish some ground rules for you listening, because we are dealing with the murders of highly politically charged figures on both ends of the spectrum, really.
Yeah, very much so.
We have to explicitly state that this deep dive is not going to take any political sides at all. Our goal here is impartially reporting the factual details from the source material. We are trying to uncover the broader cultural trend, not to endorse any viewpoints from the right or the left.
Absolutely. We are strictly looking at the forensic evidence left behind, because the how and why of these crime scenes reveals a massive, deeply disturbing cultural shift.
It really does.
We're examining what happens when the digital world's relentless craving for attention collides with the cold, physical reality of lethal force.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because there is a startling detail connecting those two domestic cases.
Take the through line.
Yeah. In both the December 2024 killing of Brian Thompson and the September 2025 murder of Charlie Kirk, investigators discovered text physically written on the shell casings left at the crime scenes.
And that specific choice writing on the casing itself is where we really need to start.
Yeah. Let's look at the Thompson case first.
Yeah.
From December 2024. The facts laid out in the investigation show that the suspect, Luigi Mangione, possessed handwritten notes expressing this deep, intense disdain for health insurance companies.
Right. He had a clear stated grievance. But the crucial detail isn't just that he had grievances written down on paper. The text was specifically marked on the fired shell casings left behind on the street, not just on the unfired bullet sitting in his bag.
And that distinction between an unfired bullet and a spent casing, that is everything from a forensic and psychological standpoint.
How so? Like, break that down for us.
Well, think about it. An unfired bullet in a backpack is private. It's essentially a diary entry. But a fired casing that's ejected onto a public street, that's a billboard.
Oh, wow.
You have to think about the mechanics of a firearm. When a gun fires, the casing is violently ejected. It's scorching hot, it bounces across the pavement, and it is the singular piece of evidence a shooter knows they are leaving behind.
Because they take the gun with them.
Exactly.
Right.
So writing on that casing requires immense premeditation. You have to use a specific type of marker or etching tool that can actually survive the heat and friction of the firing chamber.
It's the dark, lethal equivalent of tagging a wall with graffiti. It's a calling card meant to be found by the authorities.
Precisely. You don't write on a casing unless you are entirely certain that a forensics team is going to process it, document it, and read exactly what you want it to say to the world.
Right. And, historically, writing on munitions isn't entirely new. Like, you look back at World War II, and bomber crews would write messages on artillery or bombs using chalk.
Yeah, classic archival photos of that.
Things like Happy Easter, Adolf,
Right, but that historical context is vital because you have to look at the difference in the target audience. When a World War II airman wrote on a bomb, it was basically an inside joke for his own crew.
Yeah, a morale booster.
Exactly, as a mechanism for morale. The enemy was never going to read it because, well, the bomb would explode. The writing was literally destroyed in the act of violence.
Oh, right. The medium is destroyed.
But in the Thompson case, the writing survives the violence. The intended audience isn't the victim. The victim can't read it. The audience is the investigators, the media, and ultimately the public.
So the casing functioned as a direct physical ideological statement. It was a personal grievance made permanent.
Exactly. But if we move chronologically forward to just 9 months later, September 2025, the Charlie Kirk assassination takes this concept of the casing as a canvas and warps it into something almost unrecognizable.
Yeah, the details of the Charlie Kirk shooting completely shatter any traditional understanding of a political assassination. I mean, I was reading the sources and I couldn't believe it.
It's bizarre. The suspect, identified by federal law enforcement in that case, is a 22-year-old Utah native named Tyler Robinson. And he used a hunting rifle.
Right.
But the messages inscribed on his casings didn't form any kind of legible political manifesto. He didn't write out his grievances about the government or society or whatever. He wrote internet memes.
And the wild part is, officials actually seemed to take these inscriptions literally during their initial press conferences. Like, they were trying to parse them for traditional motive.
They were looking for an ideology that wasn't there.
Let's look at exactly what was on these casings, because the dissonance is just jarring. One casing had the phrase, "Hey fascist, catch," followed by an up arrow, a right arrow, and 3 downward arrows.
Right. And to anyone outside of a specific gaming ecosystem, that looks like absolute nonsense.
Pure gibberish.
But researchers quickly identified that it is a direct reference to a popular 2024 cooperative third-person shooter video game called Helldivers 2.
Okay.
Specifically, it's a reference to calling in an in-game weapon called the Eagle 500-kilogram bomb.
I really want to dig into the mechanics of that, because why carve that specific sequence of arrows onto a casing? Like, what is the psychology there?
It comes down to muscle memory and digital conditioning. So the game Helldivers 2 is this massive interactive satire. Players work in teams to spread what the game calls managed democracy across a fictional universe, fighting giant bugs and robots.
Sounds intense.
Yeah, and the joke, which draws heavily from the satirical tone of the movie Starship Troopers, is that the government the players work for is actually a fascist regime itself. The Eagle 500-kilogram bomb became a massive meme within that player community simply for being comically, absurdly excessive in its destructive power. And those arrows up, right? Down, down, down. That is the actual physical sequence of buttons a player has to rapidly press on their controller to call in that airstrike.
Okay, so the source mentions that the editor-in-chief of Know Your Meme pointed out those directional arrows are often used online to signal that a user is, quote, going to do a big violent action.
Right.
It's like this cheeky, detached way of expressing violence in a digital forum.
Precisely. The shooter took the literal cheat code of a digital action and engraved it onto a physical instrument of violence. He applied the muscle memory of a video game to a real-world murder scene.
That is deeply unsettling, and the gaming references didn't stop there.
No, they didn't.
Another casing allegedly featured lyrics to the song Bella Ciao, which translates to Goodbye Beautiful. Now, it's a famous Italian folk song heavily associated with post-war anti-fascist movements.
Right. It has deep historical roots.
And it has a very specific gaming connection as well, doesn't it?
Yeah. While the song has seen a resurgence on social media platforms like TikTok broadly, it is notably featured as a collectible USB item in the video game Far Cry 6.
Interesting.
That game is set on a fictional Caribbean island ruled by a dictator, and the song is labeled Bella de Libertad, representing a rebel group in the game. The in-game description literally says it has been inspiring guerrillas and partisans for over a century.
Okay, wait. I have to stop you there and push back on this framing a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because here's where it gets really interesting to me. I don't buy that this is just internet trolling or digital conditioning, you know? You don't use a lethal weapon to shoot a prominent political commentator just for a meme.
That's a fair point to raise.
The Bella Ciao song has real historical anti-fascist roots. The Helldivers reference is specifically about satirizing a fascist regime. Doesn't that imply a genuine, albeit like warped political ideology driving the shooter?
What's fascinating here is that that is a completely natural conclusion to draw. And it's exactly what law enforcement initially tried to do. But you have to look at the totality of the casings.
Okay.
If this were a coherent anti-fascist manifesto, the rest of the casings would align with that ideology. But they don't. The ideology is entirely flattened by what was found next.
Right, because the other engravings drop the gaming and political angles entirely and just veer into pure internet brain rot.
Exactly.
One of the casings allegedly had the, quote, "notices bulges, owo, what's this?"
Yeah. And for anyone lucky enough to have avoided this specific corner of the internet, owo is a text emoticon meant to represent a face showing cute, wide-eyed surprise.
It's just so absurd to say out loud in this context.
It really is. The phrase itself is an apparent reference to a furry-related role-play meme that was popularized way back in 2015.
And then the final alleged meme on the casings was just the phrase, "if you read this, you are gay LMAO," which is just this juvenile, completely thoughtless playground insult.
And this is why researchers like Harry Batchelor argue that we aren't looking at a traditional political actor here. He noted the shooter was, quoting from the source, genuinely just always online.
Always online.
Yeah. When you place a historical anti-fascist anthem next to a furry emoticon and a middle school insult on the instruments of a murder, you are no longer communicating an ideology. You are engaged in the gamification of reality.
Okay, explain the gamification of reality for a second. How does that mindset allow a 22-year-old to mix, "ow, what's this?" with actual literal murder?
Well, it requires a profound psychological detachment. In video games, every other character you interact with is an NPC, a non-playable character.
Right, they aren't real.
Exactly. They exist solely to facilitate your experience, to give you quests, or to be obstacles. When someone becomes so chronically embedded in internet culture that their primary mode of interaction is posting content for engagement, they can start to view the physical world through that exact same lens.
That is terrifying.
It is. The victims, the responding police officers, the forensics team, the news anchors reading the teleprompter on live television, they are all treated as NPCs in the shooter's own personal content creation loop.
They literally forced a solemn national press conference to decode internet slang. I mean, Don Caldwell from Know Your Meme pointed out that the shooter knew these casings would be discovered.
They absolutely.
They knew they'd be posted about, debated, and analyzed by the national media. They successfully weaponized the media's natural instinct to decode a mystery, turning a tragic crime scene into a massive Reddit thread.
Exactly. Because memes command attention, right?
Okay.
They force people to pause, to decipher the reference, and to feel like they are part of an inside joke.
Yeah.
By writing these specific memes on shell casings, the shooter bypassed traditional media filters entirely. It is the ultimate form of internet trolling, elevated to a lethal reality.
So the Charlie Kirk case shows us what happens when a chronically online individual forces their internet jokes into the real world. We're looking at individuals doing this domestically, but what happens when that exact same impulse, the desire to tether a digital joke to a physical munition, isn't just one rogue actor, but an entire global marketplace?
Right, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, this brings us to the third source in our stack. It illustrates how this exact psychological phenomenon has been industrialized.
Let's get into it.
We are moving from the realm of domestic crime and dropping squarely into modern international warfare. Specifically, we're looking at a platform called signmyrocket.com.
Yeah, so signmyrocket.com started in May 2022. It was created by a Ukrainian IT student named Anton Sokolenko, and initially it was just running off a Telegram channel.
Just a small grassroots thing.
Exactly. But by July of that year, he partnered with a digital agency to build a full professional e-commerce website to reach international customers and really scale the project up globally.
And the mechanics of the site are where the gamification of violence becomes systemic. Anyone with an internet connection can go to this site, and for a donation ranging anywhere from $40 to thousands of dollars, they can pay to have Ukrainian soldiers write a custom message and permanent marker on actual ammunition or military equipment.
And it doesn't stop with just writing the message. After the soldier writes your joke, your username, or your greeting on the shell, they send you a photo or a video of that exact shell being loaded into artillery and fired at the Russian armed forces.
It's an entire service pipeline.
Yeah, and all the money raised goes to the Center for Assistance to the Army, veterans, and their families to buy vital equipment.
We really need to examine the user interface of this website because it explains the psychology of the buyer perfectly. The site operates exactly like a modern online storefront.
Like Amazon or Etsy?
Exactly. You browse different tiers of munitions. You can select an 82mm mortar shell for a lower price, or upgrade to a 155mm artillery shell, or even pay to have your message written on a VOG-17 grenade dropped from a drone.
Wow.
You add the lethal weapon to your digital shopping cart, you type in your custom text, you check out using Apple Pay or cryptocurrency.
It completely sanitizes the violence. It's like the app Cameo.
Well, that's a good comparison.
Right. But instead of paying a D-list reality TV star $50 to record a video wishing your friend a happy birthday, you are paying artillery operators in an active war zone to fire your inside joke at an enemy trench.
That analogy hits the core of the issue. The website's interface abstracts the reality of what you are purchasing. You're buying a kinetic, highly destructive military strike, but the user experience feels identical to ordering a custom t-shirt.
Yeah.
It taps into the exact same human desire for physical permanence and digital virality that we saw in the domestic cases.
Yeah.
The user wants to leave a mark. They want their specific personal words to be tethered to a real-world event.
And the sheer scale of this operation proves how powerful that desire is. The numbers are just staggering. As of March 5, 2025, the Wikipedia article notes that the website has raised over $1.92 million.
That is massive.
That money has successfully purchased 112 cars, 125 drones, 59 Starlink terminals, 66 communication devices, and $500,000 worth of other equipment.
The logistics are undeniably effective. I mean, it is a highly efficient fundraising mechanism for a military defending its territory. But this raises an important question. We have to look at who is actually funding this. Sokolenko stated that the largest block of ammunition sales comes from the United States, with Finland in second place.
Which means you have citizens sitting in peaceful, affluent countries, thousands of miles away from any danger, engaging in the gamification and monetization of a brutal conflict.
Exactly. When a Finnish citizen pays $40 to write a message, they are experiencing a momentary thrill of participation. They get a customized photo of an artillery shell, they post it on their social media, they get their likes and retweets.
And the reality of it it vanishes for them.
Yes, the physical consequence of that artillery shell landing, the destruction, the loss of human life, is entirely abstracted from their experience. The reality of the war is converted into bite-sized content for their personal feed.
It completely blurs the lines. I mean, for you listening, what stands out to you? Are you seeing the undeniable ingenuity of a nation under siege finding a modern, decentralized way to crowdsource its defense? Or are you seeing the surreal, almost dystopian disconnect of treating a high-explosive artillery shell like a billboard for internet engagement?
It's a tough tension to sit with.
All right.
It forces us to confront how profoundly detached we've become from the reality of violence and how desperate we are to make our digital voices feel real.
Right.
In the domestic cases, the shooters force the world to look at their memes by using violence. In the international case, everyday citizens are paying to attach their memes to violence happening elsewhere.
So what does this all mean? When we look at this progression from Luigi Mangione's anti-insurance grievances left on a city street to Tyler Robinson's Helldivers memes forcing a national media circus to an American or Finnish citizen paying $40 a pop to write jokes on Ukrainian artillery, we are looking at a terrifying new hallmark of modern conflict.
It's totally unprecedented.
Writing on munitions is no longer just a tactical identifier or a private morale boost. It has become the ultimate intersection of the internet's desperate craving for attention and the cold, unyielding reality of physical force.
We started this deep dive by talking about how most of our communication today is entirely weightless. It just floats in the cloud. But we are now seeing a profound systemic desire to anchor our digital culture to real-world description.
Yeah.
The people involved in these cases, whether they're domestic shooters or international donors, are treating lethal weapons as just another medium for internet memes, paid shoutouts, and viral engagement.
It really leaves you with a deeply unsettling question to think about on your own. If the physical tools of death are increasingly viewed as just another blank canvas for content creation, for shitposts, basically what happens to our society when the psychological barrier between a harmless online joke and a devastating physical act of violence disappears completely?
It's a chilling thought.
It really is. It makes you look at every weightless message you send a little differently. The digital cloud might be ephemeral, but the moment someone decides they want their meme to leave a permanent mark in the physical world, the consequences are anything but. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Don't forget to like and subscribe for the next episode on While We Were Distracted.